today is a little bit of an odd duck, because we're only looking at one verse, and we're not even going to spend a whole lot of time on that verse. We're actually just going to bounce off of that verse to look at some principles. But we're in Genesis, of course, and we're closing out chapter 37, and chapter 37 is the story of when Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers. And you can, if you're new to the class, you can just kind of catch up with us and read that chapter sometime on your own. But it's the story of when Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers. Certainly that study is available on CD, and those are available. And in fact, there's a few extra copies back at the sound booth if you want those. But the last verse of chapter 37 says this: "Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard." And that's how the chapter ends. So what has happened up to this point is that basically everything has gone wrong for Joseph. I mean, really everything, when you think about it. Most of his brothers had planned to kill him, but instead they sold him into slavery. And then they lied to his father about what happened, and now his father thinks that he's dead, so there's no point in looking for him. Joseph gets taken to Egypt, and then he's sold again to the captain of Pharaoh's guard. Now, there's some question about Pharaoh's guard, what they did and what their responsibilities were, but there are basically two schools of thought on this. The first and main thought is that these were Pharaoh's bodyguards, and that's more than likely what they were. However, there may be some historical evidence to suggest that they were also responsible for executing criminals. So not only were they Pharaoh's bodyguard, but they were also responsible for eliminating criminals and killing them. And you know, the jury of those days, the judge and jury of those days was these executioners themselves. And so there weren't really juries. You didn't go through trial. It was just like, oh yeah, you're guilty, and they'd whack your head off or whatever. And so this was a group of superbly trained and probably very brutal people. And being sold as a slave to the captain of that group was no honor. And so now Joseph is taken to Egypt. He's sold into slavery. He's taken to Egypt, and now he's sold again into slavery to this captain, and probably not a sign of good fortune for him. And then things just got worse for Joseph as we jump ahead in the story, and we'll see this over the next few weeks. Joseph gets accused of attempted rape by Potiphar's wife. Then he gets thrown into jail for it, and no doubt the subject of great mistreatment while he was in jail because of that. You know, they didn't just throw him in jail and say be nice to him. I mean, jail in Egypt was no fun place to go. They didn't even have air conditioning. And so it was just a nasty, filthy dungeon, basically. It was a nasty place, and he gets thrown into those kinds of circumstances. Poor guy couldn't buy a break. I mean, he just couldn't get a break. And you ever feel like that? Same things happen in your life, and then it just seems to escalate, and it just gets worse and worser and worstest. And you just can't seem to break that cycle of defeat, that defeat cycle. And so you wonder, what's going wrong? What can I do to stop this? What can I do to break this cycle of defeat in my life? Everything you do seems to go wrong, and then you can't shake that string of bad luck. And that's what was happening with Joseph. There was this thing that happened over and over again. One thing led to another, and things went from bad to worse.